Hello, everyone. My name's Nick, and I'm 20 years old. My dad got married for the second time 2 years ago, and ever since then, he has been the most jealous person in the world. It's better to rewind the story a little. My biological mother left my father and me 5 years ago for her new boyfriend. Perhaps my father stopped trusting women after that. My father was 52 years old, and his new wife, Daphne, was just 35. Understandable that she is a young and beautiful woman, but he could get jealous over nothing. Even at their wedding, where only their closest friends were invited, he managed to get into a fight with one of them because he supposedly stared at Daphne for too long. That's my dad. I found a common language with Daphne pretty quickly. Despite our age difference, we liked the same music, movies, and TV shows. It was a 100% match, so after a couple of months, we became best friends. Of course, when my daddy tortured her with his regular portions of jealousy, she looked to me for support. One night, she came to me in tears and said that my dad yelled at her for going to the gym in leggings that were too tight. Of course, like any true friend, I put my arm around her and began to console her. But of course, my father came into my room at this very moment. I never thought that my own dad would get jealous of his woman because of me, but that's what happened. Before I knew it, we were yelling at each other. It sounds absurd, but I was telling him that there was nothing between me and Daphne, and that there could never be anything. Long story short, we fought for a while and went to our rooms until the next morning. But there's one quality that you have to give my dad credit for. He knows how to admit his mistakes and apologize for them. So the next morning, he apologized for everything, and we were on good terms again. When I was 17, I got really interested in playing guitar, and by the age of 19, I even started performing at my friend's father's bar. One day, I was planning another performance, and I invited Dad and Daphne to watch it. Daphne really liked the idea, but my dad refused to go because of his work. However, he still felt guilty for yelling at us recently, so he had no problem letting Daphne go alone with me. It was the day of my performance, and Daphne and I went to the bar. On that day, there were a lot more people in the bar than usual, and this made me so happy. The only problem was that when I started connecting my guitar, something happened and it started to hiss a lot. My performance was delayed for several hours because I was waiting for my friend's dad to bring me new equipment. Daphne and I would have gone home way before that, but some people came to listen to me. They even agreed to wait a few hours while the technical problems were being resolved. So it would have been wrong for me to leave. The performance was a great success, but in the end we ended up getting home after midnight, even though we told my dad we'd be home by 10. It was a battle of titans. Now, I'm kidding, but back then it wasn't funny at all. Dad was not himself. I don't know why, but he did not believe that the reason we were late was true. Like, you've never had any technical problem before, and now suddenly something goes wrong? Yes, Dad, it sometimes happens. We argued for a long time, but at some point I got annoyed by his lack of self-control. As time passed, I also lost my temper and started talking back. I probably shouldn't have done that, but at a certain point, Dad arrived to his boiling point and kicked me out of the house. To think, all of this happened over nothing. I was very angry with him. So I quickly packed up my things and did as he said. I don't know what happened next, but I felt sorry for Daphne, and thankfully, I had a place to sleep. It happened to be at that same bar, my friend's dad's. I'll tell you what, just by smelling booze, you can fall asleep very quickly. Anyway, the next day, Daphne helped me a lot. She secretly transferred some money to my card so that I could rent an apartment and get myself some food. I rented a hostel and thought about getting a job for a week, because I would not last long on my own without it. But about a week later, my jealous dad decided to take pity on me. He called me on the phone and asked me to come back home. I didn't have much choice, so I accepted his offer. He apologized, as usual, and promised one more time that this would never happen again. But I seriously doubted that. To be honest, if I had a stable job at that time, I would not have returned. And so I had to put up with the situation. But fortunately, this truce lasted a long time because our whole family was expecting very good news. Daphne got pregnant. Dad literally carried Daphne in his arms. He was so happy. And I was happy that I would have a little brother or sister soon. The pregnancy passed very quickly. The baby was born, and it was a boy. They named him Kyle. Although I was more like an uncle to him, I was so happy. I felt like a little kid again. For the first couple of months, we as a family couldn't get enough of our newborn, but only for the first couple of months. By the time Kyle turned 3 months, Dad had gone crazy again. One day, out of the blue, he pointed out to me and Daphne that Kyle looked more like me than him, and he seriously demanded an explanation. I don't know about you, but at that moment, my patience had run out. I decided to leave the house to not make the situation any worse and just stop listening to this paranoid old madman. Thank God I already had a job by this time. I settled in a rented apartment, and my soul was at peace. I thought it would take a couple of weeks for my dad to calm down again so I could see Kyle without any problems, and then go back to my apartment to avoid any dangerous situations. But a week later, Daphne called me on the phone and started telling me horrible things. It turned out that as soon as I moved out, Dad got paranoid. He decided that since I ran away after his questioning, Daphne and I were definitely covering something up. He started demanding a paternity test. Guys, a psychiatric hospital was basically waiting for my dad. I lived in peace for a whole week, but meanwhile, my dad terrorized Daphne with this stupid paternity test. At the end of our conversation, she asked me to let her and Kyle stay with me until my father calmed down again. I was surprised at Daphne's patience because she gave my father chances again and again, viewing my father's episodes as something temporary. In any case, I agreed to let them stay. I gave her the address. She and Kyle moved in with me while Dad was at work one day. That evening, my father called me and started asking furiously where Daphne and Kyle were. But I told him to cool off and just hung up. He didn't know where exactly I had rented my apartment, so he couldn't just come to my house. He'd been calling Daphne and I for the whole night, but we didn't pick up the phone until the next day. When he called again, the next morning, I thought he had finally come to his senses. He apologized to everyone in his own way and promised to give up being paranoid, to stop shouting, and to give up demanding paternity tests. I may be naive, but I once again believed him and gave him the address where he could pick up his wife and son. But when he arrived, he put on quite a show. It turned out that, he lied to us. And this time, the paranoia was much deeper in his head than we thought. The fact that Daphne and Kyle came to my house looked like another piece of proof to him that I was father of the child. He was so furious that he even tried to hit me, his own son, with his fist. He still demanded a paternity test, and Daphne, of course, refused. What was going on with him already seemed like schizophrenia. So eventually, I came up with an idea. I offered to do that damn test, but on one condition. If it revealed that Dad was Kyle's father, and he still continued his jealous rages, then Daphne would immediately leave him. Daphne still didn't want to do the test, but everyone agreed to my terms in the end. We did the test on the same day, but it took 2 more days to process it. We came to the clinic on the appointed day together. To be honest, the test results shocked me. The doctor said my dad wasn't Kyle's father. But as soon as he was about to throw himself at me, the doctor said that neither he nor his closest relatives could be the father of the child. Based on the results of the test, it turned out that Dad was right to suspect Daphne this whole time. He was just wrong about the person she was cheating with. I couldn't believe she could betray my father like that. So my positive attitude towards her disappeared quickly. She wanted to explain something to us, but what was there to explain? Everything was clear. Dad wanted to prove that Daphne cheated on him so badly, but when he did, he wasn't happy at all. The next day, he filed for divorce. She took her things away, and we didn't see her for a long time. After this situation, I moved back in with my dad because he started abusing alcohol, and he needed my help. It lasted for 4 months, until Daphne came into our lives again for the last time. She had changed so much that we didn't even recognize her at first. She said that everything had gone wrong in her life, and she begged us to have mercy and accept her back, but we no longer had any sympathy for her. I offered my help with only one thing. I wanted to take Kyle away from her. I came to really care for him, and he wasn't to blame for his mother's actions. She agreed in the end because for her, Kyle was clearly a problem. We won custody over him, and the 3 of us started living together. It's amazing that I came up with that idea because taking him saved 2 men at once. My dad stopped drinking alcohol because of it. And now we're closer than ever, and together we're raising Kyle.